Welp, here we are again. The 2023 theme park season has ended. I mean, not really for me because I still got Fun Spot, but for all of you poor northerners and for the people that prefer Six Flags of Georgia to FSA for some rude reason, your season is over until the spring. And generally, I like to spend this time when I can't update anyone on any new coasters construction. I mean, come on, Fun Spot, you gotta follow up with that masterpiece that is Area Force 1, more on that later. I like to spend this time to go and review over the previous theme park season, and as it has become a tradition, today I will go over the most surprising and disappointing coasters from the 2023 theme park season. And in case you're wondering why it's a tradition, it's because last year's video did pretty well, so I'm doing it again. You gotta make that ad revenue. I can't make ad revenue, which is why you should subscribe, so I can profit off your enjoyment. Hi. Oh, you're here. Okay. Well, this is the studio. It's been here for a year, so I hope you've seen the studio by now. I just thought, get a little bit of face-to-face action, in these videos. It's a lot of editing. This is a little less editing. So yeah, I'll be doing this a little bit. The camera set up. You can see my beautiful face. See the background. That board took way too long. And yeah, so enjoy. One thing I must note is that unlike last year, I didn't get 30 bajillion new credits this year. That's not true, but I did not get as much this year as I did last year, mostly because a good portion of the coasters I rode this year were new coasters for me last year. So this list will actually be more specifically rides that I got on and if that particular ride was surprising or not, or depending on how much my opinion changed on that ride. That probably didn't make any sense, but we'll just roll with that. So without further ado, I give you my top 10 most surprising and disappointing coasters from 2023, 5 for each side. Now, of course, we must have honorable mentions for that precious watch time. I meant honorably mentioning roller coasters that deserve to be honorably mentioned. Duh. Starting negatively because complaining is just too much fun, we have Jurassic World Velocicoaster at Universal's Islands of Adventure. And please, before you track me down with pitchforks in hand, let me explain. I love Velocicoaster. It's in my top 5. I won't say where in my top 5 because that'll just spoil my top 25 video coming soon, but Velocicoaster is a great ride. It was just one specific ride that I got on it that was meh. And I'm not the only one that thought that. My mom and sister, who practically worship Velocicoaster, were also pretty disappointed with our, I don't know, should I spoil what number? Yeah, I'll just say first ride of the day. It was our first ride. So we did get more, and I can tell you, I'm not going to tell you, but go watch the vlog that I did that covers the whole predicament about it, and you'll see we got more rides on it, and we'll see if our opinions changed on it or not. And the vlog's probably not out yet, so you might have to wait for it, but still, it might, so go check. But don't watch it. Wait, finish this video, then go watch it. Once again, real quick, got to do another honorable mention. Mind Blower, great layout, always really rough. Then there was Armc Retrack, much better, didn't injure me this time. I was expecting it to be better, but not that much better. But it was only really better because they did a major modification to the ride, basically made it a whole new ride. That's how much of a difference there was. So I can't really count it. So yeah, I just wanted to give it an honorable mention because it is definitely much, much better.
It's just that I knew it would be better, so it didn't really surprise me, but it was still much better than I thought it would be.
All right, on to the real most surprising and disappointing coasters. First off, Montu at Busch Gardens, Tampa. I gotta admit, I had a pretty tough time finding disappointing coasters. Well, number one was actually pretty easy, but other than that, 2023 was actually a pretty good year. There weren't many rides that really, really disappointed me, but I do actually have a pretty big problem with Montu that's gotten me every time I've ridden it, and I'm just gonna say it, it's kind of boring. I'm sorry, please don't kill me, but look, the first half is fine, the 0G roll is great, but the Batwing is just boring. Look, if an invert is going to have average overused elements, it needs to try to kill you. Just look at Batman at Over Georgia. I rode that thing once during ERT at Coaster Fest, and the ops were so fast that I couldn't even unbuckle my seatbelt before we were back on the lift hill again. Ended up riding it 10 times. Could barely walk after, and that was at 8 a.m. with an empty train. My point is, Montu is full of generic, boring, overused elements, or just slow turns. And if it was running way too fast and I couldn't walk in a straight line after, which has definitely happened to me after rides on Batman, then yeah, I'd love it. That's what Kumba on the other side of the park does, although it also shook me like a salt shaker. That is hard to say. Shook me like a salt shaker. Well, that's what it did. it's rough. So if Montu did it while being mostly smooth, like Batman, then maybe it wouldn't disappoint me for a fourth time. Montu is still a great ride. I just wish it wouldn't disappoint me every time I rode it. Although I will admit my most recent rides were better than they've been, just still not as good as I'd hoped. Every time I always hear these amazing things about Montu, and every time I always get my hopes up that maybe this will be the time that it's really, really good. And I kind of expect it for some reason, and then every time it just ends up disappointing me. I don't really know why. I'm pretty sure this ride was on the list last year, and here it is again. I don't know. I guess I'm just too used to Batman. Moving on a little bit of a happier subject, Pipeline the Surf Coaster at SeaWorld Orlando, a pleasant surprise. Now this ride didn't really surprise me when I rode it. Wow, I just called it a pleasant surprise and then just said it didn't really surprise me. It was a surprise, but it was just because I had already come to know what to expect. But when it comes to what I thought about this ride a year ago, yes, it is definitely a surprise. My opinion has definitely changed from what I thought about it a year ago. I thought that it would just be pretty meh, okay layout, stand-up trains, ew, and just overall a roller coaster at SeaWorld, and that's what everyone else said too, until they rode it. Let's just say that we were not expecting it to be as good as it was. Sleeper hit of 2023, anyone? Yeah, I'd say so. Me being me, I went and rode this ride in November once all the hype died down, but I still agree that this ride was definitely a surprise. Tons of floater, fun layout, not as rattly as the others said, and those trains, wow, they are amazing. This is why stand-up coasters should exist. It adds another dimension of fun. Getting launched up into the airtime hills, your mom screaming because you never told her that the seats could do that. Video coming soon. Oh my God! And yes, she is fine. Pipeline, I think, just ended up being more fun than people expected, and I have to agree. Pipeline is just a fun ride. Number 4 on the disappointing side, again, not super disappointing, just it was disappointing. It was the 4th most disappointing coaster from 2023, is Sys Blasting Bronco at Nickelodeon Universe in the American Dream Mall. Yes, I have in fact ridden a roller coaster outside of Florida. It has a very powerful launch, and that's about it. It's short, it's rattly, still fun, but it does kind of die after the launch. It's cool that it goes backwards, but again, the elements are kind of generic. I wouldn't say it's a bad ride. I do really enjoy it, but just for some reason, it just wasn't as good as I was expecting. Great launch, again, but after that, it's just kind of, whatever. My 4th most surprising coaster from 2023 was, surprise, surprise, Air Force One at Fun Spot Atlanta. Now, public service announcement, I'm aware that I talk about this ride probably way too much, and it may or may not be as great as I make it out to be. But if you do listen to how much I talk amazingly about it, and then you do ride it, and you might be a little disappointed, you won't, but you could be, I guess. Just, I'm a little excited. I'm definitely biased towards Air Force One, but in this part, I will take away all of my bias away from Air Force One, and this is going to be my unbiased thoughts about Air Force One for the next 20 seconds. Then I will go back to my biasness. Is that a word? But for right now, I'm unbiased about Air Force One for the next 30 seconds. Air Force One did really surprise me. I'd been hyping this ride up so much, clearly, that I had to tell myself to bring back my expectations about a week before I rode it, because I felt that it had come to a point where it would be impossible to exceed my expectations. So I kind of knew Air Force One was going to be a disappointment because it was physically impossible for a ride to beat these expectations, or so I thought. I swear I was not expecting Air Force One to be that good. And now, I will say, after opening week, Aerie has not run as fast as it has been. And so even when I rode it on a hot July day, it still wasn't nearly running as fast as it was on opening week, even though it was only like 60 degrees that week. Whereas on the hot July day where it's 95 degrees, it still wasn't running as fast. Don't really know why. Probably because it has been running so fast that it has literally been faulting the brake run. They were literally running the train at half capacity a few times I was there because, yes, it has been faulting the brake run. That's how fast it was running on opening day. It faulted the brake run. So, yeah, wondering how it beat my impossible expectations? That's probably how, because it was running way too fast. It's still a good ride, even when it's not tearing itself apart. But, man, it was really good when it was. And here we are. This is where the actual disappointing coasters start. Starting off with, you might be a little surprised with this one, Lightning Rod at Dollywood. Yes, I know it's nothing compared to what it was when it opened, but I still thought it would be a very good ride. I thought that everyone was maybe over-exaggerating a little bit when they say it lost all of its bite. Turns out, I think they might have been under-exaggerating just a little bit. I waited a long time for this ride. I waited years to finally ride it. Then I waited hours in line. Then the train before me rolled back, had to wait for it to reopen. Then my train rolled back, so then I had to wait half the day for the ride to reopen after that. And then I had to wait an hour again because it was on one train on Memorial Day weekend. What? By the way, it was on 2 trains in the morning, and then we came back after it rolled back for us. Then it was on 1 train. So it might have just been that train was in service because it kept rolling back. All for a super disappointing coaster that still made it into my top 10. I mean, the first valley was pretty rough, and the second valley was super rough. And the first turns were uncomfortable and kind of repetitive. The quad down gave floater at best, but the ride still has a sense of speed. It's not as smooth or as long as I thought it would be, but still, it's a great ride. It's just nowhere really as good as I thought, but still a really, really good ride. Definitely go out and ride it, and with the chain lift, hopefully it won't be running 1 train on Memorial Day weekend, but it's still, I mean, I still really thought it was a good ride. Just wish I could have gotten a front row ride. But here's one ride that was nowhere near as meh as I thought it would be. Thunderbird at Holiday World. Did I make fun of its abnormally wide queues? Yes, I did. Did I call it a super cringy name that I should probably never say again? Yes, I did, but I'm still going to keep saying it. And was it a super long walk to get to this ride because they placed it in the farthest back piece of land they could from the rest of the park, atop a hill, a good 10 minutes away from the next ride? Also yes, but that didn't stop me. I made the trek to Thunderbird, and boy, was it worth it. So worth it that I did the walk another 5 times throughout the course of Hollywood Nights. The launch, perfection. The pacing, perfection. The rattle, actually, well, that part wasn't actually too great. That's why I made my little sister sit on the outside during every ride. And don't worry, she's fine. It's been a good 7 months, and she's only tried to eat my camera twice. Michaeli, we need to talk. You need to stop trying to eat my cameras. That's gross. Stop it.
I only did it twice.
Is this true? Yeah, like that.
Bye-bye.
Thunderbird is just a really, really great ride with one of the best launches I've experienced and a super fun layout. Heck, even the vertical loop is really good. Every element on this fairly short ride hits hard, and it's a really great layout. I don't really know why this ride isn't talked about more. It really is an excellent experience. I was really not expecting to like it that much. I more or less expected a pretty forgettable ride, and I got off with one of the most purely fun rides I've ridden. And the night rides are just... What? I don't know what you're supposed to say. Well, please don't hate me for this one, but Mako at SeaWorld Orlando was my second most disappointing ride from 2023. Look, I loved this ride the first time I rode it, but the second time, I don't know. I was just underwhelmed. It's still a good ride, but it's just a good ride. Honestly, nothing amazing. I guess riding Goliath too many times made Mako's airtime seem weak, which isn't Mako's fault, but I'm still gonna blame it. Goliath is just so good, it's making other rides worse, I guess. In all seriousness, Mako is still great. It just didn't feel as intense, I remember. The speed hill was more floater than ejector this time. I didn't get any hang time over the overbank this time, which I really did love. It was really one of my favorite parts of the ride last time, and the final turns weren't as whippy as I remember. I seriously debated this or Pipeline for my favorite ride at SeaWorld because Pipeline had better airtime. You know? It's kind of sad when the B&M Hyper has the 3rd best airtime in an amusement park behind the family coaster and the stand-up coaster. But no RMC. Come on. Give Orlando the RMC they deserve. Come on, SeaWorld. We all know. I know there's already one like 2 hours away at another SeaWorld park, but still, give them the one they deserve. What if I told you that the second most surprising coaster from 2023 was a Wild Mouse? Yes. You heard me right, a Wild Mouse. You think I'm pretty crazy, right? Well, my second most surprising ride from 2023 was Galaxy Spin at Fun Spot Kissimmee, a Zamperla spinning Wild Mouse. And before you call Ace and request for them to revoke my membership because I'm not really an enthusiast and I only got it to go to Hollywood Nights, I would never. I got it for many reasons, like, I was on Nickelodeon because of the Ace membership.
Anything. Oh, wow. How is riding roller coasters helped you overcome things in your everyday life?
Riding roller coasters has just made me less stressed.
Couldn't have done it without it. Didn't know I was going to do it until the day before filming, but still, I was. Galaxy Spin was an absolutely shocking experience. I was not expecting it to spin that much. Even though it is in the name, a trimless spinning wild mouse off balanced, that's pretty crazy. And I don't have any footage of the ride spinning that much, so here, I'll just demonstrate. Let's pan down towards the seat just a little bit. Yeah. Okay. So we see the seat. I'm not going to sit in it because I know I'm going to fall and crash into the wall over there. But this is what it looked like. Can we do a full rotation? Oh, okay. Can we do close enough? I'll just play a clip. I'll just edit one in.
Nu går det undan.
I have ridden this ride before, but it was balanced and it was alright. And I also think it was trimmed a bit. Oh, and I didn't even mention the airtime. Ejector airtime. While spinning like crazy on a family coaster, all by myself, by the way, I went into this ride expecting to experience what I did last time, a mediocre, kind of painful, slow spinning coaster, and when I sat down on the far left seat in an otherwise empty car, I got one of the craziest rides I've gotten on a coaster, period. And it wasn't even painful this time. Oddly, you'd think because it was spinning very fast, it would be more uncomfortable, but no, it really wasn't. It was actually a lot more comfortable because then I did another ride when it was balanced right after that, and it was uncomfortable. So ride it unbalanced, and I guess it's going to be more uncomfortable. So if you go to Fun Spot Kissimmee, I highly recommend sitting on the end and by yourself if you can. That wasn't a problem for me or anything. Because it's a crazy experience. And here we are, the most disappointing coaster from 2023. I don't even think it was the coaster itself that was even so disappointing, although it definitely was. Just the whole experience itself was just a letdown. Big Bear Mountain, Dollywood's new for 2023 roller coaster, was maybe the biggest letdown for any coaster I've ever gotten. It started when I was watching testing footage and seeing just how fast this ride was traveling in the second half. I was very shocked, and I really started to hype up this coaster, maybe even being like the second best coaster in the park. I was seriously thinking it could be better than Thunderhead. And just a few weeks after it opened, after Memorial Day weekend, I finally got my chance to go to Dollywood and experience the ride for myself. We waited all day, and it started to seem like the ride would be closed for the day. It wouldn't open. Around about, 5:30 p.m., the park closed at 8, mind you, Dollywood finally managed to open Big Bear Mountain, and I, just like half of the people in the park, scrambled to get over to Wildwood Grove to enter the line. Because, of course, our time saver passes didn't work because it was a new attraction in high demand, so parks don't usually include their newest rides on their skip-the-line add-ons to increase capacity for the standby queues. It's a totally normal thing, so it wasn't like a big deal for me, but just as I get into Wildwood Grove, Big Bear Mountain breaks down. It hasn't even been running for 20 minutes. Yes. And it's already broken down. Luckily, my dad had been able to join the line right before they closed it, so the attendant at the entrance did allow me to go in and join them, even though the line was closed by that point. After about an hour of waiting, the ride finally reopened, and it was on one train. A 2.5 minute long ride on one 20 passenger, which is not very big, train, on one of the busiest weekends of the year. Yeah, it was bad. A quick 2.5 hours later, we finally entered the station, and yes, they were assigning seats. And of course, I was assigned the very middle row. Now, I know that they were just trying to get the line moving as much as they could because of the super long line and the super low capacity, and none of this was really on the ride, or it wasn't really Dollywood's fault either, except for maybe the one train thing. I don't know, it probably wasn't their fault either. They probably couldn't use the other two trains. But it might have been there. They might have been able to run more. I don't know. I know I can't really let this affect my opinion of the ride, but it just definitely affected my mood going into the ride. And I still tried to stay as optimistic as I could because the ride still looked great. But unfortunately, it just looked great. The ride wasn't as amazing as I thought. The launches were okay. I mean, they were normal for a family coaster, and those airtime hills really did nothing. And although that could have been because it was just cold out and it just hadn't had time to warm up, and mind you, I was in the middle row, of course, I still had a good time. And I never mentioned the ride was smooth, but I couldn't get off the ride and say that all the hyping and all the waiting was worth it. Oh, and I never even mentioned the onboard audio, which was probably the part of the ride that I was most excited for, wasn't working either. So no airtime, no onboard audio, long wait, and one ride. All things I wasn't expecting to have all those things to happen, except for the long wait, which was still somehow much longer than I expected. Look, if I went back to Dollywood and Big Bear Mountain was somehow just as good or better than I originally thought it would be, then great. Maybe it'll be in next year's edition on the good side. But for right now, that's my opinion of Big Bear Mountain. A meh family coaster that doesn't have an ending to its story. Or maybe it does. I don't know, because the audio didn't work. And for proof that Big Bear could in fact return to this list as a surprising coaster, we've got a coaster returning from last year's video for our number 1 surprising ride. Revenge of the Mummy at Universal Studios Florida was number 3 on the disappointing side last year for my rides that left me wanting more. Let's just say, when I return this year, I got more. Originally, I thought it was just a boring, slow roller coaster in a box, though I do believe it was in technical rehearsal, which is why I could have thought that there was a lack of effects. This time, the launch hit hard, all of the effects were working, there was a random sustained ejector camelback in the middle of the ride that I somehow missed last time, and I got off the ride just blown away because I had originally planned to skip the ride, but only did it because Michaela couldn't remember if she liked it or not. Well, we both loved it, and we ended up doing it again. And that was the only ride in the park that we did a rewrite on because of how busy it was. While I will say the drop off the mid-course wasn't as punchy as I remembered, that's okay because the rest of the ride was absolutely shocking. And even though Rip Ride Rocket was also much better this time around, Mummy is by far the best ride in the park. I seriously cannot believe how just didn't like it last time, and now I was just completely blown away. That is a transformation right there. So there you have it, my top 10 most surprising roller coasters from 2023. If you enjoyed listening to me complain a lot, then please go ahead and make sure to like the video, and if you're about to dislike the button, bear left. I'm sorry, that was really bad. Anyway, if you enjoyed the video, please make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and have a thrilling rest of your day, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.
Whoa.
Don't forget I'm recording this, so this is probably just going to be at the end of the video.